Hello, Joe. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Uh, Thank you for coming onto our podcast today. So, if you could just introduce yourself and what you do.
So I'm Jo Warwick, and I basically empower women. Particularly, I have worked with men around the world as well, but I work with women to shift out of disempowerment around having an abundance of resources. So that disempowerment, where they are not just stepping into their power of confidence, but actually allowing their lives to manifest so that they have an abundance of love, money, business, so that they're fully in control and independent and confident in who they are and what they have to offer in the world, their value.
Okay. And what made you want to start doing this?
Well, I've been doing it for 25 years, I think, 25 years.
Oh my gosh.
So I've worked in different ways. So I'm a psychotherapist. I'm a psychotherapist by trade. But basically, I've sort of combined, I was in business for a long time and then became a therapist, and I'm an energy healer. And I combined what I was trying to heal on the inside. I suppose that was what was triggering me to start this journey. I was always super passionate as a therapist about empowering. More and more it became women, but it was, as I said, men, and I worked with children as well for a long time as a therapist, to overcome sort of abuse and disempowerment, trauma. And the more my journey led, I was really about trying to uncover for myself what love was, and how I could feel safe in the world. And so I was looking at it for every angle. But as I kind of moved my journey, it changed as well. But that was the kind of starting point, really, of how I could work out how I could feel safe in the world, I suppose.
That's really interesting.
Mm.
And do you have like a personal story that you want to share in regards to mental health, what you've been through?
Well, I think I'm not a great one of the words mental health, because I think that says it's something separate. Okay. It's health, it's about alignment of your mind, body, and energy, and us as a holistic whole. But we're talking about when there's a lack of balance in your mind. So you've kind of lost control of yourself in a way that you're not in alignment with what I would call your soul or your inner self or your divine connection. That you've lost yourself, you're not in that alignment. And when you lose that, you come into a state of depression, which is depressed energy, depressed expression of yourself. So you are in a state of emotional constriction. You're not being your free, open, flowing self, which is what we're supposed to be, this kind of energy flowing. And my own journey with that was, I, like many, were bright and energetic and full of life when I was born, and a lot of us experience that, particularly women. We come into the world and we're like, oh, everybody's like, oh, you're so gorgeous and you're cute and you're tiny and I love you. And then we start to have these expressions of ourselves that are, normal, healthy children tantrums, and then teenagers, and all those expressions of becoming independent. And yet this conditioning about what women should be and women shouldn't be, or, men should be and men shouldn't be. And we get this kind of, constriction about what we're doing. And for myself, so much of my work was around understanding about being the good girl. And so much of my clients were the good girl. So I even published my first therapeutic paper was on smothering, the silent abuse. And that smothering of who you are, and the over protective parent who kind of stifles your expression, and how that can lead us into an abusive relationships. And the fascination for me was because I was trying to understand why I had made all these choices, because I didn't trust myself. I couldn't trust my own intuition that my body was telling me this is not safe, don't go towards it, because I had wrong wiring. So the wiring on the inside was telling me that, well, this is unsafe, but we go towards unsafe because unsafe is familiar. So I couldn't understand why I would keep repeating patterns of heading into either abusive relationships or abusive work relationships. I had it in every environment that I would attract. Just as I started to become myself, I would attract jealousy and abuse and all these sort of different forms, from everything from sexual relationships to friendships. And that process, led me to accept that I would say I pretty much thought of killing myself for about 20 years. And it came to a crux. I often thought about dying. I've often thought about wanting to go home. I've often thought about, I want to leave the planet. And, I wanted to go home because I felt so stuck in this world, in this existence, and I couldn't seem to break free from it. So I had this crux point when I was actually working, and I'd done, by then I'd had about 30, about 7 years probably of therapy at that time. And I was on my journey and I was doing all that, but I had a crux point where I had this final trigger that was the turning point of my life, where I met somebody, I fell in love with somebody who was unbelievably looked right, felt like, and then he switched and he became everything that I'd ever met before. And I felt so unbelievably trapped that was the point, that I basically there was a kind of right, this is it, I'm going, this is done, and I found myself sobbing in the church at the end of my village, because I tried to jump in front of a car. Well, no, to be honest, the speed of the car wouldn't have done much but hurt me and upset the other person. But it was this feeling of I wasn't, up until that point, I'd always thought about it, but I was like, I don't know, I can't do this. I couldn't do it to myself. And I still couldn't do it. The thing of discovering that was I couldn't leave my dog or my parents and, my friends, but I felt at absolute rock bottom. And it was at that point, I was so filled with this belief that I was bad on some level, for existing, for being Jo. And it was that really shifted my work, shifted my personal experience. It was my absolute long dark night of the soul. Went on for a good couple of years, very dark, but as they say, when you're going through hell, keep going. But it was that enabled me to hold my clients in a much deeper place. Up to that point, I would say I was the surface level, much more, I could understand them and I was doing the work, but there was a depth that came from that. It was a full acceptance of, not that I'm here and there's nothing I can do about it, but that this is wrong and my life matters. And so a lot of the underpinning of my work was, and still is, helping people, men, women, but particularly women, to accept that they matter in every form, that they matter not just emotionally, mentally, physically, that they absolutely matter and have value about their sexuality. I think that's a big thing for women who have gone through any form of abuse, that they have, and our society does not help that, of devaluing our own sexual essence, our, what makes us creative and powerful and magnetic and incredible manifestors. But also that we matter to have the same, financial resources, that we matter to have loving relationships that match in every way, that we actually get to have. And I think I'd experienced, like a lot of women have, of seeing this endless pattern of the only way you're going to have a life is that you have to just keep giving. And that was part of it. I was just giving. And I had no concept of receiving. It was just like, just give until you're absolutely burnt out. And that's where I had reached. I was burnt out. I was working in the absolute dark end of the way of living. The people I was talking to, the people I was working with, I was working in every charity and I was working myself to the bone. And the joy was so limited. And it was that whole shift of recognizing where this, in this case for me particularly, nothing else had taken me to recognizing it was that rejection from this one person that made me realize that I had been rejecting myself my entire life.
So that's an amazing story.
Mm.
And look at you now, you're strong, you're
Mm.
stronger than before.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So I was in like a similar situation, like I was in a narcissistic relationship.
Mhm.
So I lost myself as well in the process.
Mhm.
But when we say we need to love ourselves, it's because friends have told me, oh, you need to love yourself, blah, blah, blah. But it's easier said than done, isn't it? Like, what are the ways to love yourself? How can you? Do you know what I mean? What do you?
I do. I wrote an entire book about it.
Oh,
So I have a book called The Big Book of Love, Loving Yourself, Dating with Love, Loving Relationships. And that's one of the things I realized in my work. There's the difficulty was that, I mean, when I started talking about those words, love yourself, I was talking about that 20 odd years ago. And people were like, what? You know, and trying to explain that loving yourself is not selfish, it's not bad, it's not wrong, it's, you know, it means that you know, just like getting on the airplane, you know, when they tell you to put your mask on first, if there was an accident, you cannot help another person if your resources. Now, I describe it in my book as you don't drive your car with flat tires, you know, and you, when you have flat tires, you know that if you went over a bumpy road, you're going to feel every single bump. It's going to be bumpy. And when we claim what I would call more about claiming our value, claiming our love, claiming our connection to ourselves, we're just plugging in and filling up the tire. And instead of acknowledging that when we're not tapped in and turned on to who we really are, to our soul, to the universe, to the connection of who everything is, which is available, a full energy source that's available to us everywhere. Sorry. Sorry.
it's okay.
We end up looking to relationships to fill us. And a healthy relationship should be the cherry on the cake. It's not the cake. It's like we have to acknowledge we are the cake. And the ways that we love ourselves is a decision every single moment. And it takes practice. From when I went through my process, as I have with guiding with my clients, is when you first start, it's like learning to drive a car. You have to make the decision, think about it until it becomes a habit. And it's that decision of, you hear a voice in your head that wants to slag you off. And you're like, no, I choose a better thought. It's, I want to dive in and have eat my way through the entire cake. I'll just have a couple of slices. It's an act of, is this the most loving choice I can make? Now, I'm all for there are stages when comfort food is absolutely important, particularly actually when you've missed a lot of affection. You shouldn't take things away until you are satisfying them with other things. But there are basic, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There are basic needs that need to be satisfied by us first. So, making sure that we're eating well, we're drinking well, we're going to bed early, we're getting enough sleep, we are doing exercise. I mean, exercise is a human, animal thing that is designed to shift negative energy out of our body. We are mammals. So recognizing we have a mammal body that is designed to heal itself, we can use those things automatically. So if you have been somebody who's gone into a state of there's flight, fight, or freeze, and often when we've been in any form of a trauma or abusive relationship, we are in freeze mode, stuck mode, which means the first step we have to take is move into flight mode, being able to move our bodies, move ourselves, run from things which we couldn't do at that point. So we have to run to then learn how to walk. And that walking is when we can learn to be in power of going, I walk away from this and I say no to that. So by saying no, that's a massive step of self-love. There are actions and thoughts that are all about self-love. But it is a practice.
Yeah.
It's a practice of, doing exercises. I always recommend my clients to hug themselves and stroke themselves and touch their bodies and to masturbate and ways that they love themselves. It's like, because they're all ways that are designed. Your body has a nervous system that heals itself. You just have to get out of the way and it will bubble up. Your energy will move up. It's just like a river, flowing, and there's you've dammed it up. And if you start to remove the dam, the river will just do its thing. So it's kind of like, oh, well, I don't have to keep going around trying to fix things. I'm not fixing myself. I'm simply choosing something that feels better from wherever I am. Not, I have to go from being, I want to kill myself, to, oh, I'm super happy, but manic. We're not talking about that. We're talking about small steps that every moment, every day, I feel a bit better than I do. And anything that leads you to a thought that's better, an action that's better, defining a better setup for yourself of I matter, I exist, is in the right direction, and it builds momentum. And it takes time. If you start at, as I say in my book, as I said, The Big Book of Love, it's available in Amazon and all good bookshops. But if you started your life, if you thought of it as a scale of 0 to 10, you'd be like, well, I started my life at 0 and 10 is where I want to be. Well, you wouldn't think it's that far, but most people, when they have it, woken up to the fact that they've not been living in alignment with love, whether that, and generally, if you've ended up in a narcissistic relationship or abusive, they're all abusive relationships, just disempowerment relationships that are a reflection of your own disempowerment and own lack of love for yourself, you've accepted, that has started in a much earlier place, and you've experienced some form of conditional love or lack of love growing up, that you have to realize that you're actually starting on the board at somewhere at a minus. So you're either starting, and I recognize for myself, I started in this life at -8. So the fact of getting from -8 to 0 was a really good place, to then get from 0 to 5 was, there's a huge journey, but we beat ourselves up that we haven't got far enough ahead and doing stuff. And again, those things are not love. Coming back to going, actually, I am where I am, and where I am is great. Where I am is really good. And today I can breathe and I'm safe, and I can look at myself in the mirror, and I can look in my own eyes, and I can see my own soul, and I can change the way I speak to myself. Am I talking to myself like a bitch or like an evil witch or, a cruel person? Or am I talking to myself like I would to a child? Because inside of all of us is still love. However far you've gone from it, love is always in us. It's always there. Our soul is pure love. We were born as love. We never lose that love. We are the only ones turning away from it. So if we come to this finding something like being maternal or paternal, as unless you're a sociopath or a psychopath, you know what that feels like, to be able to speak to another with great love. So it's like learning to be able to speak to yourself in that way. Treat yourself like a baby who's in need. And at times that is really, really important, self-soothing and giving yourself a bath and a stroke and a cuddle and nurturing and doing things that are going to make you, just snuggle down and feel safe. Getting massages and things like that help your nervous system move this energy through your body and be touched, so that you're not looking to a relationship to be something at this point when you are unhealthy, you are not in balance. You're not really in condition to have a relationship with another as an intimate relationship. You can have friendships, etc. But at this point, all you're looking into an intimate relationship from somebody else is to reflect back your lack of power, to control you and to punish you for something you never did. And so it is far better to come back and say, right, I'm going to look here. I'm going to look at this person, this person, this person. I'm going to take care of this person. So then I can actually attract in my life a relationship that matches a value that I know in here, a self-love that I'm actually doing as a practical thing. not just words, a practical thing that I practice, just like yoga, just like, learning a musical instrument or driving your car. I practice self-care, self-thought, self-loving behavior every second of the day. And I notice that I get more and more attuned to what love is. And then
it's about it's about changing your mindset as well.
It's about changing everything.
Because it's all to do with the mind, isn't it? I think. Is it all to do, because we are our thoughts, aren't we?
Well, we are our thoughts and our energy. So you can't do one without the other, but it is very much about, as I just said, it's how are you speaking to yourself? You're not trying to control your mindset. It's how am I speaking to myself? How is that voice?
Yes.
What am I choosing? There have been proverbs around forever of, there is a devil and an angel sitting on your shoulder. It's that choice, in American Indians talk about a beautiful story of two wolves that are inside your body. And, this grandfather says to his grandson, there are two wolves inside your body and they're fighting to who's going to have control. One wolf is, fear and anger and shame and hatred and, just destruction. And the other wolf is kindness and compassion and love and care and thoughtfulness and all ranges of that. And the little boy says to him, well, which one wins? And he says, the one you feed. And that's all it is who are you feeding? Are you in charge and driving your car? Or are you letting the car be driven by someone else, that part of you that's negative and cruel? And that you don't want to put that in the world, because what you think is what you put out, is what you get back. It's what you think and feel. If you think and feel on some level that you are worthless, unlovable, pointless, bad. I mean, I walked around, as I said, with deep, deep belief that I was bad, that because I was a woman, because I was female, because I existed in a female body, because I came into this world and I was energetic and, full of energy and joy and happiness, and because I love to laugh and be joyful, I was bad. Because I was too much and too big and too shiny and too vibrant, that somehow my natural state of who I was born to be, God-given, divine-given right of my being, was bad. I mean, how wrong is that on every level? I wouldn't do that to a plant or a tree or a flower or another human being. And yet I chose that over and over again. Somebody might have given it to me, but the biggest shift that happens is when you claim it and go, yeah, but I'm the biggest abuser of my life. I was always the biggest abuser. I was the one who was criticizing me, hating on me, putting me down, telling me off, sharing myself. I was fat and ugly and awful. I was the one doing that to me. No one else was. And then I was choosing men, women who just would do it for me, who would just reflect it back to me. And I was like, I did that, me. And that's when it all, changes, when you can shift that belief and accept it and think, okay, yeah, it might not be my choice that abuse happened as a kid or, these things happen, but I absorbed it and then I can choose to continue.
You allowed it. Yeah.
Well, not so much allowed it, but when you're little, you can't do anything about it. When, there are certain things in your life that you can't do anything about. They happen to you. And yet you can decide at any point in your life of going, but I have been replaying that. I have been, reliving that. I have been deciding that that's the truth of who I am. And then we can make that decision of going, that's not the truth anymore. That's not the truth of who I am. And if anybody else in this world doesn't like the fact that I talk a lot, I'm energetic, I'm big, I'm bright, I'm shiny, I'm here to uplift, I'm passionate, I'm sexy as beep, if that's how I feel about myself and anybody else on this planet doesn't like it, well, that's okay. They're not meant to be in my world, but I won't live any other way now, having tried the other route of constant self-sacrificing, constant trying to please, constant trying to fit in, because you just can't do it. There is no end point. You just basically want to die because you cannot make anybody else love you, hate you, enjoy you, care about you. You have no power, nothing over any other human being. So you might as well recognize this is the relationship you started with, this one, your own one, the one with yourself. And this is the lasting, most long-term relationship you're ever going to have. This one. This doesn't go anywhere. You know, this is with you for the whole of your life. So you better get comfortable at home, you know, this home. You better get comfortable and like this space and accept it with compassion, you know, compassion. And I think that's easy to have compassion, much more compassion, when you realize what you've been through and you think, Jesus, you know, what a war you've been fighting, what a battle you've been doing. So, yes.
That's amazing, really. And what message would you like to share to people then? Because we're closing this call, because you covered everything basically. So is there any message that I'll put your Instagram handles on this call, your website, so people could check it out.
Yeah. Most importantly, I would just ask people to go and check out the book. You know, it's all there.
Yes.
It was 40 years of, you know, coming into life. It's been around since I wrote it in 2016. And then I wrote a second edition in 2020 with a lot more detail. Was sort of, I evolved, and now it's also available in Audible, which came out this year. And it's, you know, it is a manual to love. It's a manual to understand how to rewrite and love yourself. And I suppose the key thing I ever hear from anybody who's ever read it, and it is that love is like WD-40. If you know what WD-40 is, it's the thing you spray when, you know, like your locks don't work or something doesn't work in your car. When something's sticky and stuck, it's a lubricant that makes everything move more easily. And when we are in a lack of love, life is hard and crunchy and difficult and rusty. It's like our locks have got tight. There's no fluidity to it. The river of flow has dried up. And it's not that the world is a lack of love. There is no lack of love. There is literally love in abundance in every form, in every way. It is an energy. It is available to you in 1,000 different ways. If you only need to go and stand by some trees, you will feel it. You will feel it in nature. You will feel it from your pets. You will feel it from your children. If you start to open up just a little, just a tiny weeny amount, you will see more love. All that's happened is you have shut yourself down, like a flower shutting itself at night. All you've got to do is open up to the light, just a little, and love will have its way with you, because that is the key thing. It's not love is a person, or love is a pet, or love is a tree, or love is an energy that flows through everything. It flows through every living, creative thing. And it's an entity in its own right. And it's that relationship between you and love itself, and recognizing that love flows through every cell in your body, every cell in your mind, every particle, every, muscle, every tendon. It is who you are. Your body is created by love. When you recognize that, you're just accepting, well, if love is who I am, then I'm only going to give myself love. You know, love is who I am, then love is what I choose. And my job is to accept and learn what love is, not what love is. You know, it's very easy you have to learn what love isn't to know what love is as well. So it's not hating on the contrast. It's like, well, that was an experience. And what did I learn from that? You know, as an example, you said you'd been in a narcissistic relationship. I'm not a great one for labels, by the way. I just see it as love and not love. It's, you know, it's love and the lack of love, because that keeps us disempowered. But by recognizing and thinking, okay, well, I was there, and what have I learned from it? Well, I learned from myself that clearly this person external to me was showing me I wasn't loving myself. I wasn't caring for myself. I was disempowering. I wasn't claiming my own power for myself. So I let this person hold the power for me. And it's like, well, thanks. I'm going to take that back now. Thanks. I reclaim all my power. I reclaim my power. And having mantras and things like that, you know, standing in front of a mirror and saying to yourself, looking in your own eyes, every day, you know, I matter, I love myself. The law of attraction, if you get into a groove of speaking something with your heart, and speaking not a false statement, but speaking something that feels truthful in your heart, you know, even just saying the words I love, I love, I love, I love, I love, I love, you will start to move, because you can't physically say the word love without it being, it's a power word. So you can't say the word, you can't say the word love without actually feeling some essence of love. By looking
Yeah.
at, feeling and thinking about things that you love, you'll start to find with the law of attraction, it will kick in, and it will start to make you think of people you love and pets you love and things you love to do, and then you're in the right groove. And then you can start saying about things that, you know, oh, I love my backside, or I love my collarbones, or my finger. If all you can think at this moment is I love my finger, great, focus about how much you love your finger. You know, we all have things that, but get into the groove with the law of attraction, put that time and energy into just taking those moments to really be there, and it just builds on itself. You know, that's the practice. So yeah, that's my thoughts for today.
Thank you very much for sharing.
You're most welcome.
And let me just finish that. Stop the recording, basically.